everybody. Today my topic is a little bit different. I'm going to call it the Zen of Jesus. The term Zen is thrown around pretty loosely these days, and we say that a cool-headed coach would be a Zen master. And in the Silicon Valley, there's a lot of Zen-novation, they call it. And we feel pretty zen while we're on vacation, lying on a beach, watching the waves lap up through our designer sunglasses. And the modern grand master of Zen, a guy named Shunryu Suzuki, confused many people by saying, quote, "There's no need to have a deep understanding of Zen," end of quote. So it's sort of funny. But most of you know that the philosophy of Zen appeared on the scene about 500 years after the birth of Jesus Christ. And the principles were a compilation of what many had worked out on the mastery of themselves. Now Jesus, as we know, he mastered himself. He decided to do it and he did it. Now one modern way to think of Zen may go something like this. It's a full-on focus that incorporates the inseparable togetherness of body, mind, and spirit. And isn't that what we all want? To be one whole person, using every bit of our ability. But Zen's a way of being as well as a state of mind. Zen involves seeing through the distortion produced by our own thoughts or religious or political influences. It's being able to see clearly through the fog of what we call life. And so many things that we've been trained and taught since we're children may or may not be the right thing for us to think or to be or to do. Many of them are. But it's hard to break through tradition. Now, I'm not trying to advocate a mixture of Christianity and Zen. I simply want you to think about what you would really be like with no filters. Now, I'm not talking about good filters. I'm talking, life is just full of filters. Now, my main point is going to be twofold. I want to show you how cool Jesus was under pressure because of his lifelong focus and because of his personal development. And two, I want to point out the fallacy that most Christians think that they have it all figured out because someone told them that it was all figured out. And today we're going to touch on the Zen of Jesus. I'm going to start off talking about the simple power of being human. And a while back I was sitting under the pavilion in my backyard enjoying a beverage, and I heard the 15-year-old twins next door burst out into their yard, and followed closely by two barking dogs. The back door slammed shut and they began playing. Yes, they were actually playing outside. And one of the twins in his recently changing voice said, "You can't touch me. I'm now a giant orb of fire." And the other brother, now accepting these new terms, simply said, "Okay." They were obviously role-playing some game with powerful shape-shifting rules that can change on the fly. The orb of fire must have been a highly evolved and highly coveted manifestation. Well, knowing how powerful a human is designed to be, knowing how powerful a human is supposed to be, I wish I could have heard the other kids say, "Step aside, fiery orb. I'm a human being in the true and original sense of the word. I am well acquainted with the easy access to my special powers, and I'm covered by incredible protection. And I'm gifted with the ever-present prosperity freely given to me so that I can live freely and give greatly. So back off, flaming sphere, and taste the special power of a true human being." I would have liked to have heard that, but I didn't. I heard, okay. But as we figure out a way to see ourselves, or how we really should see ourselves, we're really the person we're really created to be, we can tell Captain America, "Go fetch your shield." We'll wonder what happened to Wonder Woman. We're going to see Spider-Man just sort of creep away, and you will be, to all who have a privilege to see you and to be around you and to enter your sphere of light, you're going to be a sight to see, because you are true humans and you know how to use your body, your soul, and your spirit. Romans 8:19 from the Phillips says, the whole creation is on tiptoe to see the wonderful sight of the sons of God coming into their own. I mean, the whole creation's on tiptoe. The whole universe is anxiously waiting to see which of your many God-given tools you're going to decide to master. And it's totally up to you. God can't make you do anything. But boy, when we get to the place where we decide we want to walk with that power of that Christ within, that power of the Holy Spirit, we will be able to do all the things that we thought we could do. Now, what if we could really do all that we could? I mean, you've heard people live at 10% of their brain power, right? Now, I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know who first came up with that. But just think, what's the other 90%? If God said he supplied all our need according to his riches and glory, and we have need, is it God's fault, or are we doing something, or are we thinking amiss? If you're trained to believe that you're supposed to be poor, it's real easy to stay poor, isn't it? Sure it is. If you're trained to think you're going to die at a certain age, I'll guarantee you're going to die at that age. What if you set your mind higher? You know, people say, well, I'm going to live to 90 like my grandpa. Why don't you live 120? You know, why not? I mean, what really, we stop ourselves from shining. What if you could walk with the power of Christ? You can have exceeding abundantly above all that you ask or think. I mean, doesn't God's word call us super conquerors? Yeah, more than conquerors, super conquerors. Well, what do you need to conquer? That's Romans 8:37. Why would God call us that if we weren't? Haven't we already been given exceeding abundantly above all that we can ask or think? So what are we waiting for? Doesn't Ephesians 3:20 say that? Let's open our eyes and find out what's ours. It's out there. Your prosperity, your health, whatever you're looking for has to be there. It's a promise. Aren't we taught we can do all things through Christ? Philippians 4:13. What's all things?
All things.
You know, doesn't God really wish for us to have all prosperity and amazing health? 3 John 2? Yeah, absolutely. Isn't it a truth that no good thing will ever be withheld from us? Imagine, no good thing is withheld from you. That's Psalm 84:11. And here's a good one. As we move toward God, he moves toward us. James 4:8 said that. James was the half-brother of Jesus, younger brother. In similar terms, as we move toward what we want, it's going to move closer to us. That's how God designed this whole universe. If you want something, go get it. Set your mind, move toward that thing, and it's going to move towards you. That's the design of creation. It is impossible to fail if we just keep moving the right direction. God even told us that we, as human beings, are just a notch below him in available power, and that we've been blessed with dominion over every single thing we put our hand to do. That's Psalm 8:5 and 6. Now that's some heap powerful words, y'all. That's heap big powerful stuff. That you're just a notch below God, the Creator. Remember, he made us just a little lower than himself? That's craziness. But that's how he designed humans to be. But do we live that way? We should be able to tell somebody's a Christian. But the only way you can is with some fancy hairdo and a cross. You know? But I mean, we should be able to tell by the power they're walking, that they're living, that they're talking, the prosperity we see just following behind them like the wake of a boat. Why not? And my mind is just blowing just a little bit thinking about that power, that dominion, that abundance is within reach of our thoughts and moving ever closer to us as we act. See, no sane young person ever dreams of growing up and being average and powerless. Dad, I think I want to grow up just like you. I want to be average and powerless. Good work, son. Join the club. Here's a lazy boy for you. Right next to mine. Just sink in and enjoy. While in the home of a friend, their little girl ran up to me wearing a ruby red ballerina tutu. And she stood right in front of me. She stared me in the eyes, waiting for me to acknowledge her miniature beauty. And not knowing if she was supposed to be a princess or a dancer, I asked her what she was. And she tilted her head forward and gave me a chilly stare through the tops of her eyes. And she put her hands on her hips and said, "I'm a ballerina, duh." And then she put her little arms in the air and she did a semi-graceful spin on one bare foot and ran out of the room laughing. She was at that moment a ballerina. I love kids because they have vivid imaginations. And if held, those deeply rooted images will propel them to excel later in life. After all, we get what we expect. You get what you shoot at. People get what they really want. If they want poverty, I guarantee they're going to get it. If they want to live a life of hell and trouble, they're going to get it. It's all about the focus, the mindset. Gosh, you look at the athletes, how they push their minds to think of themselves winning. They all do it. As Jesus' half-brother so wisely inferred, what we move toward will move toward us. What do you want? You want love? You want money? You want power? What do you want? Josephine's cousin always wanted to be a nurse, and she's still a nurse 50 years later. 50 years! My friend Zach always wanted to be a pilot, and he worked his way into the Air Force Academy. He flew B-52s, and now he flies for the U.S. Forest Service. How many of your childhood dreams have been fulfilled? My greatest joy of a child, aside from mischief, as every redhead knows, was to make people feel better about themselves. And that was my superpower. And I'm still trying to do that. I still try to leave everybody better than I found them. You see, did you know that even Jesus Christ grew up dreaming of superpowers? You ever think about that? He grew up dreaming of having superpowers. Remember, he never did a miracle till he was 30. But what did he do with his mind those first 30 years? He kept that vision of what he saw other people living in the Bible through his entire youth, through his adolescence, and through his young adulthood. But again, he never did a miracle as a youth. He never did one as a teen. He never did one in his 20s. No matter what movie you saw, with the cardboard beard on him, you see. He kept the internal vision of manifesting incredible power and helping and healing thousands. And this image was so etched into his brain, so imprinted and tattooed on his heart, that when it came time, he was ready to go. I remember when I lived in Hoboken, New Jersey, before it was a cool place to live. And it was right across from New York City. And there was a group of buildings pretty close to where we lived, and they had basketball courts, I think 6 courts that were lighted all night. I never went by there winter, summer, spring, fall, midnight, middle of the night, in the daytime where there wasn't kids playing basketball. You think those kids got good at playing basketball? You play it all day long, all night long, anytime you can. You're going to be pretty darn good. I don't care what sport it is, what thing it is. See, year after year, he kept thinking about it. He visualized it until it was realized. He kept moving towards it, and then when it was time, it moved right to him. That power and that great healing power that he had. He'd picture himself doing what the great men and women of the Old Testament had done prior to him. He saw how he fit in the entire scheme of the cosmos. He saw how he fit in the universe. This is Jesus, folks. He didn't know everything. It says he learned by obedience. He learned how to be the Christ. He was trained by his parents to be the Christ, but he believed it. Some of us were told bad things by our parents. You're no good. You never come out to anything, whatever. You're going to end up in prison. Whoops. Whatever it is. You see? But then either we believed it or we didn't. Might have believed it for a time and then we snapped out of it because some better words came into our head. You see? But at 30 years old, his well-rehearsed mental pictures finally morphed into reality. When Jesus took on the status of being his true human self, he began to shine. He was a great kid. He was perfect in all ways, but he wasn't powerful. Do you know you could be perfect and not powerful? Until he got Holy Spirit, and then it was perfection personified. Now we'll never be perfect, but we can be powerful any second we decide to be. Walking by Holy Spirit is the easiest thing any human has ever wanted to do. But most of us don't want to do it, or we're afraid to do it because what happens? What might just happen? What will my friends say if I start doing signs and miracles and wonders? I guarantee you're going to get challenged. You're going to get confronted. People are going to be jealous as crazy of you. But why not? You got one short life. Jesus took on the status of being that true human. That's when he began to glow into who he was designed to be. He began to fulfill his calling. He completely understood the concept of being a complete human with equal parts of body, soul, and spirit working in concert, in unity. And he, in a sense, became the glowing orb the neighbor boy spoke of, the bright morning star, some call him, the light of the world, he called himself. You see, Jesus' wildest childhood dreams became his and our reality. See, Jesus understood the simple power of being human. I just want you to catch a little piece of it. So let's lightly touch on 3 lessons that are going to show the Zen of Christ. One is be faithful or be consistent. Be faithful, be consistent. Number 2 is be quiet within. And number 3 is be focused. Be faithful, be quiet, be focused. Now, if I was a little bit more Zen myself, I would just say, be. Or be yourself, or exist. Now we're going to look at a life-saving incident where Jesus was cool under incredible pressure. Both pressure from within because of how he had been raised, and from without by the top religious leaders of the day. Jesus was the Zen master of his own soul. He went up against deeply ingrained religious teachings that dated back to and had been ardently upheld since the days of Moses. His whole culture revolved around these teachings. Everything revolved around the teachings of Moses. The religious fervor that we're going to see is still evident today by fundamentalists of all religions. I don't care what it is. These are people who look only to the past for answers to today's problems. Doesn't work, folks. They're stuck in the time-worn, sucking sinkhole of a cesspool in which all religion basks, breeds, and drinks deeply. And this conformity is as deadly to the soul as it is to the people who oppose their fragile teachings. So, be faithful, be consistent. Quote, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. End of quote. Zen proverb. See, in other words, keep living your life. Keep moving the direction you want to go. Keep doing the things you know you're supposed to do day after day after day. And then if you somehow reach enlightenment, reach your full potential, then you still chop wood and carry water. You still do the things you're supposed to do. The way you do one thing will typically be the way that you do everything else in life. Master the small stuff. It's all small stuff. John 8, verse 1. And this is from the Voice. Verse 1. Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. Okay. Then verse 2. He awoke early in the morning to return to the temple. When he arrived, the people surrounded him. So he sat down and began to teach them. And while he was teaching, the scribes and Pharisees brought in a woman who was caught in the act of adultery. And they stood her before Jesus. Now that's a pretty nasty thing to do. That's a pretty nasty thing to do to this woman and to Jesus. To burst into a house where you know a woman is at that very moment having sex with a man who is not her husband, pulling her off of him, dragging her scantily clad into a public place, standing her up in the middle of a circle of people right in front of Jesus, who was at that point doing an amazing teaching. It's just nasty. Now watch how Zen Jesus plays this. Pharisees. Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. Moses says in the law that we are to kill such women by stoning. What do you say about it? Now, usually our strength is our weakness as well. And this is because we become blinded by what we excel at. And Jesus was not fooled into acting religiously instead of just acting on what he knew was right. Chop wood, carry water. The first point was Jesus was faithful to teach and consistent in how he went about it. Long before he was enlightened via Holy Spirit, he faithfully chopped wood and carried that water. He lived, he taught, he breathed, he loved. He was a great kid. He controlled himself. He existed. He was. But after he was enlightened by the raw power and light of spiritual power, he still chopped wood and carried water. Jesus was consistent, but not consistent to a fault. So that's the first point, consistency. Be consistent, be faithful. Whatever you do in your life, be faithful, be consistent. Put your mind into it. Now the next point is be quiet within. Quote, sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes and grass grows by itself. End of quote. You're going, what? What's this fool talking about here? You know, don't spend so much energy on trying to make your world spin. It's going to spin with you or without you. Grass is going to grow with you or without you. Prosperity is going to happen with you or without you. Healings are going to take place with you or without you. Things are going to happen on earth with you or without you. Life will go on with or without us. My old Texas football coach, his favorite motivational quote, if you want to call it that, was, "We will win this game with you, without you, or in spite of you." Now, I know he stole it from somebody else, but in his broken German accent, it sounded more like, "with you, without you, or in spite of you." And that dude had the worst breath of anyone on earth. I remember my first non-Zen moment. You know, I'd done something wrong, and at that time, the football coaches would hit you if you didn't do something right. And they had this paddle that had the school initials routed into it backwards. And so if you'd missed a play, they would whack you on the leg with that thing, and when you go to the showers, you'd have the school initials emblazoned across your leg. They told us that drinking water during practice would turn us into pussies. Now, this is Texas. It's over 100 degrees in August. And there was no water to drink except for that little white spittle that was at the corner of your mouth. That was it. Well, one day I did something wrong, did a play wrong, as my manner was, and he grabbed my face mask and he started screaming at me, and his breath was so bad, you know, that I turned my head inside that football helmet and I started breathing out the ear hole. But he was going to win this game with me, without me, or in spite of me. So I thought, really what he's trying to do is you do your part and we're going to win, was all he was trying to say. You do what you're supposed to do, the way you're supposed to do it, and we're going to win. If everybody does it, we're going to win. And I think the body of Christ is much like that. If we can just stop fighting and hating each other as Christians, because they're not your brand, or he has a shinier suit, or whatever the thing is. They talk a different way than we talk. We all do. My God, Christianity today is nothing like it was in the first century. You think they wore suits and wore little name tags? Think they had hair that was combed back like this? Women had their hair way up here, to be closer to God. We've just turned Christianity into a carnival in many ways. They didn't have big robed choirs. They're nice, they're pretty, they bless a lot of people. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying they didn't have that in the first century. They met over meals. They ate together. They talked about things together. That was their fellowship for 40 years. Verse 6. This was all set up as a test for Jesus. His answers would give them grounds to accuse him of crimes against Moses' law. Jesus bent over and wrote something in the dirt with his finger. And they persisted in badgering Jesus, so he stood up straight. Jesus, let the first stone be thrown by the one among you who has not sinned. See, allow your quiet inner voice to guide you through the storms. It has to be there, folks. Once we keep ourselves quiet enough to see past life's storms, we're going to always hear that still small voice like it talks about in 1 Kings 19:12. I mean, how much alone time does anybody have anymore? You wake up, bing, Facebook. There's, you're doing this thing, and it's just crazy. All day long you're checking your emails, you're deleting stuff, you're taking phone calls, you're on a run, you got your earphones in, you're listening to your tunes or to your books on tape. I do, we're just never alone. We never have quiet time, and it's such to our detriment to just be still. Just be still. To be quiet. Allow your inner quiet voice to guide you through your storms. And now finally, the third point is be focused. Be focused. Quote, if you walk, just walk. If you sit, just sit. But whatever you do, don't wobble. End of quote. Zen proverb. Don't wobble. Don't waver. We're all being pulled by a thousand different ways at the same time. You're thinking about so many things. It's hard to stay focused, but focused we must stay. Our friends, our family pull at us. Facebook makes you feel connected, yet lonely. We look at other people's lives on there and they seem like it's perfect. They run better, they jump higher, they have better barbecues. They eat at better restaurants. They have better recipes. They have prettier dogs. They have funny cats that eat chips. It's just crazy what we've allowed. The music we love inspires us, but impedes us. I used to have a boss when I was in a machine shop, and one day he would play classical music, pretty loud. Another day he'd play hard rock, like driving beat rock. And I asked the boss, I said, why do you switch like this? Is it your brother likes one thing and you like the other? He said, no, when we want accuracy, we play classical music. When we want production, we play hard rock. And I thought, and then I thought, yeah, I get it, because I've driven down listened to my favorite tunes, driven down. All of a sudden I look at my speedometer and I'm going 90. Because that music pumps you up and gets you going. We're so easily manipulated that we have to really watch what we're thinking about. We have to learn to be quiet. Be quiet. If we would just think for a second before we shut our mouth off, there'd be a lot less wars. Just for a second. You ever notice how when somebody's talking, all you're waiting for is that chance to connect somehow, and then you jump in and say what you really wanted to say? You don't remember what they said. You're just waiting for that chance to connect something so you can shoot your mouth off. I do it. You know, we think we're adding value to people. You know, yet all we're doing is trying to add value to ourselves. You see, it's important. You know, screen time on the computer, on the TV, it shapes us. We think that's how we're supposed to look. So we have to go out and buy new clothes, buy new running shoes or shoes to walk around, you know, whatever it is. It shapes us. Not to mention our beloved breaking news that dominates us and tells us what we're supposed to think and what we're supposed to care about and who we're supposed to vote for. I mean, we're just pulled from every single angle. Be quiet. Take the time to be quiet a little bit. Like Jesus, we too need to develop monk-like focus if we're going to supersede life's many distractions. You got to be able to focus. Remember, if you're not living your dream, you're living somebody else's. We have to train ourselves to be perpetually in the moment. We walk when we're walking, and we never wobble from what we're presently engaged in. If you're at work, what are you supposed to do? Work. You know how much work actually gets done in a typical 8-hour day? 3 hours. It's typically about 3 hours of actual work. If you think about lunch and your breaks and that person that keeps coming and leaning on your cubicle, telling you stories about what they did last weekend, you see, or the guy leaning on the shovel telling you how many girls he was with, you know, on Saturday. I don't care. I don't want to see pictures of what your wife looks like. I don't care. You see, I mean, I don't want to look at your Facebook feed while I'm at work. I'm at work. And so about 3 productive hours a day. And then all the vacations and holidays, what do you get, about a week's worth of work a year? You know, imagine if you put your mind into what you're doing. I think we'd be a lot better off. If you're relaxing, isn't it a good idea to relax? You know, when you're on a vacation, you should be vacationing, not worrying about your work. What a waste of time. I like it when I go away and I don't even know what day it is. You ever experience that? You're away and it's like, I don't know if it's Sunday, Saturday, Friday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I don't even know the days in order anymore. You know, if you're at work, work. If you're relaxing, relax. If you've taken the time to play or to run or to exercise, then play, run, or exercise. If you're going to fish, go fishing. You see, the Ecclesiastes 9:10 says, "Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with thy might." Whatever you find yourself doing, put your heart into it. Put everything into it. The other day I was on a little 13-mile run up halfway up Pikes Peak and up to Bar Camp and back, and I do this every Thursday or Friday, and while running downhill on a particularly steep single-track trail, I felt my brand new Garmin smartwatch vibrate on my wrist. Zzz. And so I was curious to see what it was vibrating me to see. So I looked down at my watch, and it was somebody's Facebook message that I mistakenly started reading. Then I tripped over a rock. I started rolling downhill until friction overpowered gravity. See, if you're going to run, then run. Facebook messages can wait. Verse 8. Now once again Jesus bent down to the ground and resumed writing with his finger. The Pharisees who heard him stood still for a few moments and then began to leave slowly, one by one, beginning with the older men. Eventually only Jesus and the woman remained, and Jesus looked up. Now these guys, imagine being surrounded by a murderous crowd. These guys all had a big honking rock in their hand. They were thinking bloody murder. They were going to murder this woman right in front of Jesus. Because Moses' law said to murder an adulteress. Now, isn't there a group of people today that do that still? Stone people to death? Do some barbaric things? Well, Jesus, that was in the law. But truth sometimes supersedes law. Light supersedes law. You know, love always supersedes the law. Freedom supersedes law. Isn't Jesus Christ, didn't he come to set us free from the curse of the law? Yes. He knew this. He knew that people had to be treated differently than maybe even was written by Moses. Now, he's treading on some thin ice here, folks. Now, these guys, they were ready to pummel this woman with rocks. Now, Jesus is just, all those people listening to him, what do you think they did? They took off when these guys started, when this whole group of Pharisees and religious leaders started walking up with these rocks. Wouldn't you have? You wouldn't want to get caught in that fray. You know, and now he's surrounded by this woman standing. He's kneeling down, writing something in the ground, trying to keep his freaking head together. He had to get himself quiet because what he said and what he did was either going to get this woman killed or get himself killed, or it was going to make the people walk away. And he told them, hey, whichever one of you is without sin, let him throw the first stone. Then he just kneels back down, writes on the ground again. And then from the oldest one to the youngest one, they drop their rocks and they walk away. Till he's the only one in that little courtyard, you know, surrounded by all these loose rocks, and that woman standing there. I don't know if she was naked or if she had something on. Don't know. Probably didn't have much on, because they caught her in the very act of adultery, just waiting to trap Jesus. But then he got quiet and he just said, whoever's without sin, you throw the first rock. Well, every person knows that they blow it. And they couldn't go up against that kind of logic. Just get quiet. When life is spinning, when people are haranguing you, I need that report, I need those papers, I need this job done now. And they're calling you and your texts are blowing up, your cell phone's off the hook, you know, and you're like, and you're getting pulled from every different way. I need you on this job. No, I need you on this job. Hey, if you're at work, just work. If you're running, just run. If you're on your Facebook, then Facebook. I'm not saying it's bad. You see? And then Jesus, he looked at this woman and he said, dear woman, where is everyone? Are we alone? Did no one step forth to condemn you? And that woman caught in adultery, Lord, no one has condemned me. Excuse me, folks. No one has condemned me. I got to pull this. And then Jesus, well, I do not condemn you either. All I ask is that you go from now on and avoid the sins that plague you. Imagine Jesus. He was perfect and powerful, yet he said, I don't condemn you. He didn't condemn her. So if you walk, just walk. If you sit, just sit. But whatever you do, don't wobble. Jesus did not wobble in what he believed was right in that situation. And what's right in one situation may not be right in another situation. That's where you learn to walk by the Spirit of God. Let's 100% do whatever we're doing at that time. Let's put 100% of our energy. You see, anything less is uncivilized, or should I say, un-Zen. You see? Now, basically, in summation here, one modern way to think of Zen may go something like this. It's a full-on focus that incorporates the inseparable togetherness of body, mind, and spirit. And isn't that what we all want? Zen is a way of being, as well as a state of mind. Zen involves seeing fully through the distortion produced by our own thoughts or by religious or political influence. See, think about what you truly believe with no filters. Jesus was cool under pressure because of his lifelong focus and his own personal development. See, most Christians think that they have it all figured out because somebody told them it was all figured out. But children seem to have this focus thing mastered, while we adults take the rest of our lives trying to regain that childlike attitude of focus. That's all Jesus was trying to say here. See, children are that fiery orb. They are that ballerina, that nurse, that doctor, that pilot, long before they're ever a ballerina, nurse, doctor, a pilot, or athlete. See, kids are pretty zen. You see, so let's be faithful, be consistent. 2, let's be quiet within. And 3, let's be focused. Let's not be fooled by tradition. Let's see through all the religious fundamentalism that just binds societies and binds people and trains them up to do stupid things, murderous things. And let's learn to detect the still small voice of God and be fully into whatever we put our energy into. Jesus was Zen before Zen was cool. So let's mimic the cool, uncluttered focus of Jesus Christ, and we too will be a bit more Zen. God bless you all.